before you can even think about automating uh, threat detection and analysis, you have to do a level of work up front. And that is really the heavy lifting of it all. The hardest part for most organizations is understanding what is the value of the data that they have. Most organizations have not ever even gone into this exercise. They don't know the value of their data. They assume a value without ever having a truth to the value. So I teach a lot of CISSP classes, CISM classes, CISA classes, and one of the first lessons, right, that we walk through is the fact that there are certain things that are absolutes, and there are others that are not. The practice, the art of cybersecurity, there are very, very few absolutes, very, very few rules. However, one of the core rules, for instance, is what I call the first rule of security. And the first rule of security is you never want to spend more to protect an asset than an asset is worth. Well, if I never do the heavy lifting to determine the value of my data, then I'm perpetually going to be breaking rule number one of security. I'm always going to be overprotecting the asset value. And that's what we try to avoid, right? So going through the initial exercise of determining what is the true value of the data that we possess, whether it be intellectual property, whether it be just sensitive data or proprietary data, things like that. You really need to go through that initial exercise. That is going to determine how you do everything else. That's going to determine how you ensure that you're not spending more to protect the asset, in this case data, than the actual asset is worth, right? So hopefully you're following me so far, right? As always, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I usually try to address them, if I can during the presentation, or sometimes I wait to the end. But that's kind of completely up to you. So yes. So next, after we value our data, right? After we put a number, right, and quantify the data, next we move to qualify and do a qualitative analysis. Now, a qualitative analysis is most easily defined as a feeling. It's how I feel about that thing, right? Often you'll see this in guidance documents or anything like that as probability. What is the probability or likelihood that this will be compromised? This is typically where perception and reality diverge, because there is no one single answer. It all depends on that organization and that organization's security posture at that time, that organization's approach to doing business. And there's no shortcut to it. This is also one of those areas where I can't give you a simple answer to here is the probability that this is going to happen, because it's not going to be the same. For instance, the probability of loss for an organization based in Miami, Florida, due to a hurricane, is not going to be the same probability of loss for an organization due to a hurricane as in, let's say, Houston, Texas, right? They both experience hurricanes during hurricane season. However, the statistics show one is more likely than another. So this again is that initial heavy lifting. What is the probability that this is going to happen? And that's how I work into calculating, right, what things I should pay most attention to versus what things I can afford to pay a little less attention to, right? Unfortunately, when organizations try to calculate their probability, they have a sense of bias to how they do it. They usually score the probability of something happening lower than it really should be, mainly because they are using their experience instead of the experience. Just because my organization based in Miami, Florida, has never experienced, loss or catastrophic loss or what have you, uh, due to a hurricane, doesn't mean the probability is reduced. I have to look at all businesses in that city or that area or region, and how often do they experience catastrophic loss? And that is my probability number, not just based on what my business has experienced, right? So that generally is why we find that most businesses calculate or adjudicate a lower probability rate